Good morning, everybody, and welcome to our first hydrogen economy discussion day. Personally, I'm looking forward to it. It's a topic that have come past my attention, sitting on the board of mining companies, hearing what the government of South Africa say, reading about this as part of a green economy and sustainability. And as all topics, I mean, there's lots of views. So how to address one's personal curiosity. Ask Paula and her amazing team of Resources for Africa to put together a one-day conference and with their ability, invite world-class speakers. At the end of the day, I'm going to know a little bit more about hydrogen and the hydrogen economy. So thank you for joining, especially to all our speakers and the participants. Now, these days can only be put together because of amazing sponsors. So you could see behind me all the logos of the people who make this possible. This is an offspring of the Joburg Indaba, and therefore, ultimately, we exist purely because of our partnership with the mining industry. So thank you to all our mining industry partners as well. So if you're a first timer, we've done this since the start of COVID. So many of our participants have interacted with this platform. First timers, it's a simple platform. You should on your screen at the bottom right, see where you can interact with us. I urge you to interact with us. I will be putting some poll questions from time to time. I will test whether we agree or disagree with the speaker. We call it, we even have what we call a B.S. banometer, and B.S. doesn't stand for Bernard Swanepoel. So if somebody says something, we test whether as an audience, we think that is spin or real or factual. So let's keep it interactive. Please participate. Most importantly, you need to get your questions through to me. The way to do that is on that same screen, there's a place to put in your question. Keep it short. Question really is seldomly more than one sentence, and it should be able to sound like it finished with a question mark. Otherwise, of course, it's a statement. We do get typically more questions than what there's time for Q&A. And so I am the moderator, and you need to be irritated with me if your question doesn't make it through. But we try to get through most of the questions. So that's unfortunately in the sort of time of online, that's how we have to make it work. But I suppose 18 months on, we all either very grateful for online or very used to it. And that's just how it is for the foreseeable future. So when I started listening to hydrogen, I obviously found that not all hydrogen is the same. So I'm going to ask Avi to just put on a slide. And this is just a slide I took from a JP Morgan presentation. And that slide will just show you that we are going to today make sure that we understand whether our speakers speak about gray hydrogen. And gray hydrogen is not particularly necessarily good for the environment. It is a natural product of a process. And I think right now, today, probably most of the hydrogen in the world, and certainly in South Africa, would be gray hydrogen. Obviously, if you have access to beautiful, clean, renewable, greenhouse-free electricity, and you add water, you've got a very simple electrolysis process, and you can make green hydrogen. So be careful. When people talk about hydrogen, it may not necessarily be green hydrogen, and we need to distinguish. Obviously, as the world unfolds and countries manipulate the messaging, those who've got access to gas and those who've got access to especially natural gas are talking about all sorts of still to be proven technologies to get to the different versions of turquoise, hydrogen, etc., etc. So pay attention, class. Make sure that when we talk hydrogen, we talk about real green hydrogen or not, and we just clear what we talk about. So the context for this conference couldn't have been better. On my next slide, I want to take you through a few recent comments from Cyril Ramaphosa, and this was in his role as the president of the African National Congress. Now, when politicians speak in front of BUSA or business organizations, you can almost ignore what they say. When they speak in parliament, well, we've got a few clear cases of them having found to be lying even. But typically, when they're in the inner circles of their power bases, I pay more attention to what gets said there. So, Cyril Ramaphosa, the president of the ANC, says we have implemented structural reforms in the electricity sector, such as publishing regulations stating that generation projects under 100 megawatts in size will no longer require a license from the National Energy Regulator and will be able to sell power to multiple customers by wheeling electricity across the grid. Next slide, please. So this leaves most of Twitter, who hates on Gwede, a bit like looking for something else to hate on him. Thank God for nuclear power and boats generating electricity, because this was what made him the evil or the representative of the evil anti-green empire. Ramaphosa went on to say this will not only alleviate immediate energy supply shortfall, but will lead to massive investment in new projects and stimulate growth in the short and medium term. Clearly, we cannot participate in the green metals revolution if it takes place, when it takes place, without access to clean power. Clearly, we cannot talk about green hydrogen unless we've got additional green electricity or power supply. So I still think these are the most fundamental baseline announcements, and let's hope it plays out. If we go to the next slide, and I've obviously just taken out of President Ramaphosa's ANC speech what is applicable to today's conversation. We all know that there's a Presidential Commission on Climate Change, and he stated that Lekgotla will receive a presentation on climate change and a just transition, outlining specific risks of climate change for the country. Measures to meet South Africa's obligations in terms of the Paris Agreement, and a number of opportunities that exist for a genuine, just transition. Beautiful. Let's hope that the fact that this gets set in the inner circles of power, that it is real for this time. If we go to one more, another slide. He then goes to list that there are many interventions to stimulate growth. I really picked the ones applicable to us. Support for new industries that have high potential for growth and employment, such as, I don't know why Dacha is suddenly called hemp, renewable energy, global business services, and the hydrogen economy, it should have been. My apologies, that was my typo. All the other typos were actually in the press release of the ANC. So I should have asked the audience, would you put your money into the hydrogen economy, or are you just buying Dacha? But that would be an unfair question, so let's not be too controversial too early. In conclusion then, of course, I think, again, Ramaphosa was quite blunt on the next slide to indicate that we will have to, they will have significant budget implications. And we can't do this by compromising our fiscal trajectory. We need to be ready to engage with the eventual sacrifices and trade-offs that it will require. So, I mean, within days of the president saying this, we are talking about one of the cornerstone initiatives of our government. Good timing, I would argue. The South African government and even the ANC is spectacularly good at launching, at announcing. In the meantime, the rest of the world is significantly ahead of us. Well, 26 of the 27 countries who have publicly stated hydrogen economy things. So if we look at other countries, just a week earlier at the US Department of Energy Hydrogen Shot Summit, they recommitted to their 1-1-1 target. They targeted $1 cost for 1 kilogram of hydrogen within 1 decade. And of course, under Biden, all of this comes with a few $billion. So $1 billion for electrolyzer capacity, $8 billion for regional hubs, and $500 million grant funding for research. So we will hear about the challenges facing South Africa. We will hear about the opportunities. But so often in South Africa, we think our natural endowment entitles us to win, to be the largest gold producer in the world, to have a special claim to the PGMs market. And we ignore the fact that other much stronger economies already have infrastructure, already have done research, already are actually spending billions of dollars whilst we talk. So nice environment, nice and challenging. I want to practice a few polls before I hand over to our first keynote speaker, Fleetwood Grobler from Sasol. So if we can get our first poll question up, it's a practice question, but I need you to engage with it so that you just get comfortable that you can do this sort of thing. I'm assuming that it's on your screen. I don't get to see the poll question. So the first question is, SOSMA is on medical parole. Now what? First option, we just have to accept that we've been shaped. It's a South African joke for all our international participants. You don't have to choose that, but we have been shaped. Your second option on the question, Zuma is on medical parole, now what? Well, at least, thank goodness, he can lead our nuclear procurement program, something clearly near and dear to his heart. Or thirdly, perhaps more humanely, we should send our condolences to the family with him being terminally sick. Stung in the cheek, don't get offended, don't break your screen. It's just so that we can all feel what it feels like to engage with the polls. So we leave the polls open for a few seconds. Typically, it's a bit of natural selection. If you're slow, you don't get to participate. This is how democracy online work. And so we'll close that poll. I'll get the results. I'll share it with you at some stage. I want to ask you two specific questions, which is more relevant to the rest of the day's procedures. So I'm asking that the next poll question gets put up. And the question is, in a country with limited renewable energy, like South Africa, would it make sense to pursue green hydrogen? Remember, it can't be green if it doesn't start with clean energy. Answer one, option one, yes. Option two, no. Option three, only once all coal-generated electricity has been replaced. So are we talking about something that we probably shouldn't be doing until we have rid ourselves of the legacy power generation of our country, the carbon-intensive power generation? So I'm going to give you a few seconds to apply your minds. If you will do that for us. And then in conclusion, my last question, which is also just, I'll start the question and answer session with Fleetwood with feedback on this. What position do you want Sasol to take on the hydrogen economy? Option one, lead by going for green hydrogen. And no doubt Fleetwood is going to share Sasol's plans with us right now. Option two, do not use it as a distraction. So whilst we are pumping all sorts of stuff into there, let's at least talk about green energy. No, we say don't do that as an option. Option three is assist government with gas infrastructure, because I think it will become obvious to those of you who may be new that unless a country has got existing infrastructure, we start with a significant backlog. So that poll will close in a few seconds. It is my absolute honor and privilege to introduce Fleetwood Grobler, the man who saved a national treasure from falling over. It cost us all a bit of pension money. It pushed my retirement date out by about 12 years, Fleetwood. We can talk about that later. But let's not talk about what went wrong. Let's talk about Sasol, the re-energized Sasol, planning to play a significant role in the hydrogen economy of South Africa. An absolute perfect opening keynote speaker. Fleetwood, thank you for your time, and over to you for your presentation. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, Bernard, for your eloquent introduction. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It is absolutely a pleasure to be with you all today, and I appreciate the opportunity to share Sasol's vision of a hydrogen economy and illustrating its potential. So if I go to my first slide, next one, please. The hydrogen has become an increasingly prevalent topic on the agendas of governments, industries alike, as a viable option in combating climate change. Recent reports of extreme weather events illustrate the devastation to communities, which heightens the urgency of the UN's Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change Assessment report, calling for increased and faster decarbonization. While this report paints a grim picture, we have an opportunity for Southern Africa to play a major role in the global green hydrogen economy. We are blessed with large endowments of sun, wind, platinum group metals, and ample land and water to become a major participant in the global hydrogen economy. There are already a number of initiatives underway that form the foundation needed to commercialize hydrogen, which we believe will enable a just energy transition and enhance reindustrialization in the region. At the center of Sasol's green hydrogen vision lies our Fischer-Tropsch technology. We have unsurpassed expertise globally in this unique technology, with 7 decades of experience in practicing and refining our processes and engineering of the technology. Through our FT technology, we are able to use green hydrogen and sustainable carbon sources to produce low carbon fuels and chemicals. We see a future where green hydrogen production hubs are located in high renewable energy zones and are linked to demand centers to drive efficiency and access. The key variable in this future is the cost of green hydrogen reaching $1.50 per kilogram or lower over time to establish Southern Africa as a major hydrogen region with export and local beneficiation opportunities. Next slide, please. I mentioned the recently released IPCC report, which assesses the current reality of climate change. And as reported, the outcome clearly illustrates that not only enough is being done to combat this global phenomenon. Governments and industries alike around the world are increasingly setting ambitious targets and aiming to be net zero. These goals and ambitions are noble, but they require a significant global effort to materialize. And the IPCC report concludes that we are behind. The projected carbon dioxide emissions across various scenarios vividly illustrate the outcome of the current status quo against what would need to be achieved to maintain a 1.5 degree scenario. Most notably, the report emphasizes key crucial climate metrics that reflect significant impacts on the environment, especially on CO2 concentration and rising sea levels. And we are experiencing these impacts through significant weather events. We believe Sasol has a promising role to play in contributing to decarbonization and enabling a just transition with green hydrogen as a key integrator to leverage renewable energy. Green hydrogen at scale is nascent, but has the potential for clean transportation and industrial applications. According to the IPCC, if we do not progress down a path of significant decarbonization, we will not be able to limit warming to the 1.5 degrees. Next slide, please. Southern Africa's natural resources and endowments, as well as its industrial capacity, are sources of competitive advantage that underpin our economy. Specifically, there are 3 structural advantages that offer a compelling proposition for Southern Africa to play a role in the global green hydrogen economy. Southern Africa has large-scale, high-quality renewable energy potential. Our sun and wind capacities are some of the best in the world, rated on par with Chile, Saudi Arabia, and Australia. These endowments bode well for the power sector's ability to decarbonize, which will require approximately 150 gigawatts of renewable energy to be installed by 2050. Renewable energy development zones would be selected for large-scale development on available land in strategic locations, which could potentially hold about 922 gigawatts in renewable capacity. Ladies and gentlemen, that is really a big source of competitive advantage that realized. Secondly, South Africa has sufficient land and water resources available for hydrogen production. This put into perspective, about 1% of land would be needed to produce 10 million tons of green hydrogen, while the water requirement is about only 31% of what the current power sector uses in coal-based generation. Thirdly, through Sasol's unique Fischer-Tropsch technology, South Africa is the leading destination in existing installed capacity. We have the asset base and technology to retrofit our current facilities to beneficiate green hydrogen at scale and capture a portion of the global green fuels market through exports. The green hydrogen opportunity is critical for South Africa to enable a just transition. Next slide. Although Southern Africa has the right ingredients that are necessary to consider developing a green hydrogen industry, we must have the right economics to compete with other destinations. As this race into green hydrogen gains traction, it is projected to become cost competitive with grey hydrogen towards 2030. New technologies and solutions will be developed. We just heard about the US 1-1-1 focus, which is really a good focus to hear, because when the Americans put money where their mouth is, things start to happen. So what we moot here is most probably going to be happening. So new technologies and solutions will be developed, where learnings from large-scale electrolysis and renewable energy technologies will improve economies of scale and competitiveness. South Africa, along with Chile, Australia, and Namibia, have the potential to be leaders in the green hydrogen export market due to their renewable endowments. The cost and price differential between the net importers and the net exporters is based on independent current forecasting and indicates the upside potential of the global green hydrogen economy. However, for South Africa to be a viable green hydrogen hub, we must join forces and provide a compelling proposition that is competitive. This will further be enabled by the right regulatory environment combined with first mover advantage. This could differentiate the winners and the losers among the competing countries. Next slide, please. The opportunity to grow a hydrogen economy that requires market with scale, such as mobility, industry, power generation, and exports, is beginning to emerge. We are starting to see how the hydrogen commercialization process is crystallizing. In the past few months, Sasol has signed up to participate in the development of a number of initiatives that seek to develop the hydrogen economy, both on a local and global level. A number of South African mining companies are also progressing plans that will assist further in this development. In Southern Africa, based on a moderate case, we believe there is potential for demand of about 3 million tons of green hydrogen centered around the northeast and southwest regions. Another 3 million tons or more could then be exported to international markets where coastal hubs will play a key role. Note that these numbers may significantly increase in an ambitious scenario and remain underpinned by the cost of green hydrogen in the realms of $1.50 per kilogram or lower. Although these developments are very much conceptual and work in progress, these catalytic projects must be enabled by a national hydrogen strategy, supporting regulations, and new supply chains. We are engaging across industries and governments, domestically and abroad, to enable the co-creation of the Southern Africa hydrogen economy over the next few decades. Next slide, please. Sasol is internationally recognized as a leader in the synthetics, fuels, and chemicals production through our unique Fischer-Tropsch technology. It is through this know-how that we can produce green power fuels and chemicals through what the industry call power to X. Sasol is uniquely positioned globally to pursue a first mover advantage in large-scale green hydrogen through our Fischer-Tropsch technology and know-how. Unlike our competitors and peers who would have to pursue greenfield investments end-to-end, we would be able to leverage our existing assets enabled by cost-affordable green hydrogen production and renewable sources of carbon to produce sustainable products. We have substantial R&D capacity behind our technology to drive continuous improvement, and we produce distinctive catalysts that optimize output for various forms of power fuels at world-leading efficiencies. The strategic advantage of this technology is that its feedstock is agnostic. We can use cost-affordable green hydrogen and sustainable sources of carbon, such as biomass or potentially direct air capture when economically viable, to produce sustainable synthetic fuels and chemicals. While Sasol has the largest installed FT capacity in the world, our technology is also licensed to a large number of companies around the world who contract us for our technical expertise and to purchase our distinctive catalysts. As a company proudly rooted in South African heritage, we are exploring opportunities to grow our South African footprint in the advent of new and emerging value pools. Our ambition is also to leverage this capability to become a global player in the nascent power to liquids industry, especially in the production of sustainable aviation. Next slide, please. To conclude, it is clear that the challenge to realize a just energy transition and pursue the growth of a hydrogen economy is an enormous undertaking. It can only be achieved through a robust national vision and strong collaboration across all stakeholders in the region. Sasol has always been an advocate of partnerships and shared value creation that derives benefit for all parties. This is especially key in promoting Southern Africa as a credible partner in the global green hydrogen economy. It is critical that the enabling environment is created through the right regulatory framework, while also positioning the region to attract the financing necessary to invest. The hydrogen economy will require a new value chain to be established and critical infrastructure to be developed. These hold significant potential in fostering collaboration for growth and foster a new national skills pool. Green hydrogen is expected to grow new jobs, which will require new specific skills development. As the world moves towards a greener trajectory, Sasol is committed to work with the South African government and other businesses to co-develop the required strategies, policy frameworks, and supporting infrastructure to realize the green hydrogen economy. This commitment also includes the investments and plans for the decarbonization of our own facilities over time. To conclude, given South Africa's combination of renewable energy endowments, rich mineral resources, and technical capabilities, the country should take a prominent, if not a leading role, in the global hydrogen economy and collaborate with others in the region. Sasol believes the time is right for South Africa to tap into hydrogen's potential to realize a clean, secure, and affordable energy future, and Sasol is uniquely positioned to play a leading role in the country's hydrogen economy, aligned to both the national and our own greenhouse gas reduction ambitions. We are excited about the future, and we are committed to play our part in decarbonizing not only our own business, but also our country, guided by Sasol's purpose to innovate for a better world. I thank you.
Fleetwood, baie dankie meneer. Thank you so much. I think the reason we were so keen to get a Sasol input from you is obviously these big dreams can but only be realized if current players like yourself support it, gets on board. But now you made a rookie mistake by giving me more time for questions and answers. So your team will talk to you afterwards. I mean, don't do this. You are open to unlimited abuse for the next 20 minutes now. But let me first just go back to the audience with the feedback. Our very serious question about how do you as a South African react to Zuma on medical parole. 80% says we must just accept that we've been shaped. Some 7% have got empathy and say we should really send condolences to the family. More seriously, onto the proper questions. In a country with limited renewable energy like South Africa, would it make sense to pursue green hydrogen? 90% of the audience says yes, because I'm likely the only guy who didn't think we should. Fleetwood, can I ask you? So, I mean, whilst we generate dirty electricity, isn't diverting our scarce at the moment renewable energy to create green hydrogen, which is not the world's most efficient energy overall from start to finish? Does it make sense? I mean, do you think it makes sense?
I think, there's a recent study that was conducted by the National Business Institute that looks at South Africa to reach net zero by 2050. And they've looked at all the various sectors, the electricity generation, the whole petrochemical, the other industries in the country. And the conclusion of that report was that it is going to be really a pathway to net zero, that renewables will play a significant role, that hydro, that gas, as well as hydrogen, all has its place to get there. So I see a system where the need for electricity as well as the need for hydrogen coexist, because the one can build off the other's scale. As we know, the base is underpinned by a renewable source of energy that can either go into the grid for electricity use, or it can be applied to generate green hydrogen. And if I look at that and the opportunity, and I just would like to also highlight, Bernard, the critical mass that we have in South Africa is that potentially the 2.3 million tons of grey hydrogen that Sasol needs in its current process creates a demand that over time, when it becomes cost affordable, that 2.3 million tons can conceptually be replaced by green hydrogen. So we've got economy of scale in South Africa that gives us an anchor base load that could be utilized with dedicated, sort of support of renewables to enable that. And then you can say, okay, but that's now a base that you work from, but not including even in that, view, how you can think about mobility, heavy duty trucks, how you look at trains in terms of, fuel of hydrogen into electric vehicles, and how you can think about the steel industry that could be using green hydrogen to manufacture green steel. You have also have to tap into the ability to export hydrogen in terms of the needs there that starts to think. So I think if you put all these together, it just makes for a very good critical mass scale story that we have to make work.
And I suppose in the end, then the question is the next gigawatt of green power, should it go to this emerging, or your word, nascent industry, or should it just fix Eskom and the country's other problems? I mean, I suppose it's the prioritization, the 2050 net zero Paris Agreement, no doubt we need it. And so it's the tactical sort of interplay in the short term. I want to go to the last question, and you don't even have to comment on it. What position do you want Sasol to take? obviously 63%, 2/3 of this audience believes that you will be leading us going to for green hydrogen. And most of the rest of the audience wanted you to at least assist government with gas infrastructure, etc. Going over to questions from Lisa Stein, which you will know well, one of our top journalists. Eskom has failed to invest in upgrading the national grid, and already there is no more grid capacity in the Northern Cape. How big a risk are such constraints to SA's green hydrogen ambition? Perhaps the grid is a proxy for constraints. Are we going to get there unless we also fix other things, Fleetwood?
Yeah, I think that's a very solid observation. Now, we've got optionality. So keep in mind that if you island the concept of renewables together with electrolyzer in a spot where it can be utilized or export, you don't need to wheel the renewables to the place where you put the electrolyzers. So that's the one scenario. The other scenario is that you generate electricity in the Northern Cape, for example, and you wheel it without infrastructure, which is not possible, back to where you need it in Gauteng or Mpumalanga. And that is the dilemma. How do you develop the master plan in a programmatic way with having very clear vision of how infrastructure would support that? And there's a bit of a chicken and egg. So you have to think about transmission line, renewable and new infrastructure in that regard. Or you could think about, infrastructure that how can you transport the hydrogen that's developed or generated in those good endowed areas of renewables. How can you get the hydrogen back to where it's needed? So then you talk about pipeline infrastructure. You talk about export opportunities at coastal regions and things like that. So I think there's optionality, but the master plan that is also being developed through the DTIC and as well as the IDC, which is being commissioned by Minister Patel, is how to think about commercializing the hydrogen economy in South Africa, is also looking at a couple of angles in that regard. What would be the best way to look at how to leverage South Africa's natural endowment? Is it through transmission? Is it through pipeline? What does it make, first sense? What comes second? And how do you need to explore those options going forward?
And certainly one of my own new learnings about this, if you look at America, who clearly has got pipelines, gas lines, and you look at what the government is spending, fantastic amounts, but only 500 million on grants for research, 1 billion for further development of, electrolyzing technology and efficiencies, and a good 8 billion for hubs, for infrastructure, and a country which already has it. So I think this question highlights that this has to be solved at a national problem, perhaps even a regional problem, and there will have to be significant development of new infrastructure. Thandeka Mongodusu, who I know is a non-executive director at Z.B.S, and that's perhaps why the question is extremely relevant. South Africa is a water-scarce country, and that can point, or can the point about availability of water as a facilitator of the hydrogen hub be unpacked? She sent that as a question then. So as a water-scarce country, is the availability of water as part of our national endowment facilitating hydrogen hubs in South Africa? Just water. Give us the water perspective as you see it, Fleetwood.
Yeah, I think, Thandeka, that's an excellent question. I think I touched on it in my presentation where I mentioned that if you replace all the red zones and you get the renewable electricity to the gigawatts I mentioned, it will use only 31% of the conventional coal-fired power stations that generate steam. The steam is used the energy to drive a turbine that drives the generator. And so you've got this water consumption through the steam generation to generate electricity. Now, if you're on a like-for-like basis, there's a huge reduction in water consumption when you do a hydrogen generation through electrolysis. So that's the one data point. The second one is that the analysis that's been done by some of the well-known consultants has concluded that if you do water desalination, the cost of hydrogen impact to invest in desalination kit to use water from the sea is not that significant to add to the cost of hydrogen in terms of its production. So I think therein lies another, big opportunity, is that we should think also how about, using seawater and desalinate that and put up the infrastructure in that regard, which then have a zero impact on our natural water inland.
Thank you, Fleetwood. I've got many more questions than time, so I'm going to push ahead, perhaps even group a few questions. So Ndum Shlaba asks, is it true that Sasol is currently investing heavily in blue hydrogen? And then Rolf Havenstein is asking, how would you describe the Sasol hydrogen project, green or gray hydrogen? Can you sort of respond gray to green to, or gray to blue to green? And again, you touched on it, but perhaps just expand a bit.
Yes, I think that it's all very relevant questions. So just to summarize, gray hydrogen is produced through fossil fuels. Blue hydrogen is also produced through fossil fuel, but it has got a cleanup step to capture the emissions in the process of producing the gray hydrogen, and then it becomes blue because you've got a lower footprint in producing the hydrogen. And then green hydrogen, as we said, is through renewable energy. So in terms of Sasol's focus is really our project is to say, how do you, in a systematic way, and when hydrogen becomes cost affordable, how do you replace the gray hydrogen with green hydrogen? And as I've indicated, we have got the downstream kit to still produce the same products. It is the upstream feedstock introduction that you need to then optimize to bring in the green hydrogen. So I would say our trajectory over time is to move from gray to green. And there may be steps of blue. So they are not a huge, I would say, mega, as Ndu has alluded to in terms of focusing on blue hydrogen. Blue hydrogen is adding carbon capture and sequestration of the process of manufacturing gray hydrogen. Yes, we look at that, but I think the step to go directly to green may be more efficient in the long run.
Yeah, I omitted to, on my really crude introductory slide, just point out that for blue, there's the infamous carbon capture step. And obviously, if you're from the coal mining industry, it's a silver bullet. And if you're from the environmentalists, they said, yeah, well, perhaps at best you delay the leakage back to the environment. So obviously the carbon capture step is not as proven perhaps as some of the other bits of the technology. A quick question from Wilma Swartz, who's also on the program later. What do you see as the biggest obstacle to be globally competitive? And perhaps briefly Sasol and even South Africa from your perspective.
So I think, the one thing that we cannot change is the endowment of natural resources through wind and solar. So that is a given God-blessed endowment that we've got in the country and in the region. So that is competitive. There's no doubt about the wind speeds and the radiation of the geographies that we have in the region that is world competitive and can stand at competing with the best. The key question is, added to that, you need to install infrastructure and you need to install electrolyzers and renewable generation capacity. And one of the key things that we have seen in our assessments is that if you have the right introduction as the cost curve reduce with the best optionality on financing, that drives for a very cost competitive outcome. Because your load factor is already, sort of high for South Africa's endowment, but you need to then implement smartly. And that's why I refer to a programmatic view of introduction of doing hydrogen in the country. You should not put all capacity at the highest point in the cost curve when hydrogen costs you still $3 or $4 a kilogram. You need to start with this catalytic projects, but you need to think phase 1, 2, 3 to 10, so that you can introduce the vast majority of your capacity at the cost curve when the electrolysis is at its optimal cost point, when your cost of producing hydrogen is at the optimal cost point. And that is the just judgment of wisdom of when to introduce it through the phases of development that will also play a role in the competitiveness of how you compete against the other peers. But the point is, you have to start with catalytic projects. You need to be learning and scaling in a programmatic way from there on.
I think there are two very good questions that follow up on that. The one is from James Wells. What's Sasol's timeline to transition from your current 2.3 million tons of grey hydrogen to green hydrogen? So give us a time horizon where you'll then be doing more green than grey, I suppose.
Yeah, I'm not going to be looking in that crystal ball, James, because the driver...
Make promises for your successor. It's like everybody's 2050 net zero promise. Come on, Fleetwood. Yeah. Come on.
No. I think the realistic and truthful answer to that is, if hydrogen, the cost of production of hydrogen becomes cost affordable to replace our alternative of grey hydrogen, that is the point when it will be fully implementable and conversion. Now, my crystal ball is not as good as yours or anyone other's, so you pick a date in the future when that is going to happen, and that will be the probable time that we will be able to convert.
And is carbon tax one of the key parameters? So, I mean, if we had to have the $50 or $150 equivalent carbon tax tomorrow, would this equation shift dramatically?
I think it all comes down to the economic viability of the whole equation. And yes, carbon tax does play a role in that assessment.
But you may die.
So yeah, you have to make sure that it is in a fashion that is, South Africa doesn't have all the infrastructure than, maybe a US or a Europe. So it would be not wise to support a just transition by not taking all these factors into consideration of how to introduce, how to peak plateau, and how to really make sure that the economic viability of the country is still going to remain, and that there's no magic. You can't switch off a light today and tomorrow you've got everything on renewable. The world needs more energy. You need still, coal, gas, and nuclear, and the mix of what is there. You need to have a trajectory to decarbonize and switch over time, but it doesn't happen overnight. So it's a fallacy to think the world's going to need less energy in 10 years' time. There is a need for more, and it's the wisdom of how to switch that in the mix that will eventually have to prevail.
I am skipping quite a few complimentary comments because I'm not here to blow hydrogen, up your orifices and compliment you. The audience are very impressed with some of the stuff you are doing and what you've said. So take that as a given. But my second point back to the competitive advantage or inhibitors is obviously policy. And there was a good question which I'm looking for that says, it's from Michael Smith. An appropriate regulatory framework in South Africa is key to the successful transition to a green economy in this country. Is there a credible forum through which stakeholders can collectively engage with government to achieve this objective? So where are you participating? Where are you seeing these processes happening, Fleetwood?
Yeah, I think that's a very, very relevant question, because we know that the public-private collaboration would be also a key to unlock this journey in a right fashion. So we are, I'm going to refer to three areas. The first area is that I mentioned earlier that Minister Patel has put a national panel together called the Hydrogen Panel, that's under the leadership of the IDC. Joanne Beattie is taking care after, unfortunately, and sadly, Dr. Johan van Zyl passed on. And that panel is going to get some base established in terms of what are the requirements, not only from a geographical, but also from a policy, also from a financing, also from an industry point of view, what are the basic requirements that Parliament need to consider? So that's the one lens into it. The other one is that we also part of the Global Hydrogen Council that is looking at how to commercialize hydrogen and drive the cost of hydrogen down globally. And then the third area is we are mooting the establishment of an energy council, which would then be also the long-term interface between business and government. It's very similar to the energy, to the minerals council that is fulfilling that role. So it's agnostic whether you produce coal, platinum, or gold. So the energy council would be, electricity, fuels, gas, hydrogen, battery storage. All of that is part of the energy equation. And at the moment, South Africa don't have a forum where all matters related to energy can come together. And that focus then the interface with government. And so we are keen to promote the establishment of such a forum. And that may be then the longer term way of focusing the interface with government to get policy and regulation also then aligned in a more efficient way.
Fleetwood, we are about 2 minutes past the allotted time. I need to jump onto the next link. Audience, you stay on the link you are. Fleetwood, thank you very much for your contribution. And please, as the audience says, play the leadership role that you are called to do as a company and as an individual. Thank you for your contribution. Cheers, sir.
Thank you so much. All the best. Thanks.